Welcome in to Locked On Knicks, and we have a fantastic guest for you guys today. It's officially draft season now. I think I'm ready to say it. The Knicks have lost like 800 of their last 802 games or something. I don't know. I lost track a while ago, but it's time to start looking at future Knicks. And so we brought on one of our best buddies to do that with us. We have Prez of the Strickland and Gavin. I think in this first part, we get into some interesting discussions first about the Knicks and what they might be needing, and then about our first prospect on the board here.
A myriad of big picture questions on how the Knicks should wrap up their season, including Prez's ideal rotation. And then he tells us why Chet Holmgren is a pterodactyl and much more on all the top prospects that could potentially be New York Knicks, culminating in a fantastic story about Nate Robinson. How do we get there? You can find out right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. I am Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. He is Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And as we already mentioned, we are joined by our good buddy Prez, who you might know as @_Presidente on Twitter, or from his work on The Strickland, or on Pod Strickland, or Draft Strickland, the podcast, where he talks about draft prospects. So I won't hold this up anymore. Let's get into our discussion with Prez. All right, as promised, we are joined by Prez. You might know him on Twitter as @_Presidente with a Z. And you might also know him as the lead draft guy at The Strickland, a website that I can say completely unbiasedly, one of the best websites on the internet, particularly for Knicks and draft content. Prez, how are you doing? How are you feeling with how things are going with the Knicks right now? Are you excited that the whole world is ready to switch over to draft content now?
As Tibbs and the Knicks lose power, I gain power directly. I feed off of it. I flourish off of it. So yes, I am ready.
Well, when you say Tibbs, that we want to kind of open up with some general Knicks talk here. So, everything's swirling around. Obviously, you talk about this like you do Pod Strickland every week, and what's your general feeling right now on Tibbs and on firing him? Because I came out pretty strong in our final game recap before the All-Star break saying, like, I had wished that he wouldn't have made it out of MSG with a job, but I certainly hope that he's not the coach after the All-Star break. Where do you stand on that whole thing right now?
So I wasn't really surprised by what happened. It's always going to be a little shocking to see that many dramatic losses in that epic fashion in such a short time span. But like, I told folks a while back, like just internally at the Strickland, that there's no reason for this team to not stop losing, right? Like, because Tibbs wasn't going to change anything. And this was even before RJ got hurt. Like, RJ was hooping all right. Julius was finally beginning to turn it around. Mitch was having his best stretch of the season. The bench wasn't as good, but a lot of guys were playing well. Evan was playing well, and we were still losing all the time. So I'm like, all right, if we're playing okay and losing, and Tibbs is shooting us in the foot every game, and we know Tibbs is not going to change, and the schedule is going to get harder, then of course we're going to keep losing. And given that the schedule is brutal, I told people, I was like, if we lose, 15 out of 20, 18 out of 20, 20 out of 25, like, it's very likely that Tibbs' seat will get hot and he might not make it to the end of the season. And a lot of people, I think it was just so hard for Knicks fans to comprehend that we would really sink to those depths. But like, that's just what the schedule kind of dictated, given what was happening. And we knew Tibbs wasn't going to change his terrible coaching. So, for me, it was like, they're either going to fire. This is going to happen one way or another, and they're either going to fire him in the middle of the season or towards the end of the season, or this is going to happen, and they're going to wait and just ride out this slow motion car crash and do it in the off season, which is what happens with most coaches, right? Like I was curious the other day, so I looked it up, and the 6 last coaching changes, 5 out of the 6 happened in June, and the one who didn't was Luke Walton. That happened pretty early in the year, so it would definitely be unusual if he got fired, but this is an unusual situation. So I think the front office is going to say, hey, like, we have a good relationship with you. We might not agree on everything. We gotta pivot to the young guys, both for winning and for development. And you can get with that, or you can get out. Thanks for your help. We really appreciate it. And I don't know. I mean, history says that Tibbs will probably say, I'm out. But history has also, like, Tibbs' back has never been to the wall in this way before. Even in Minnesota and Chicago at the end of the 10 years, those kind of ended in fiery disagreements, to put it mildly, but it wasn't quite like this, where it was like, all right, like, we've reached the crescendo here in the season. So I don't really know what's gonna happen, man. I think he should. I mean, I would prefer if he was gone, because he's not doing well, and like what is there to know, right? Like, what is there to know? Like, he has strengths as a coach, he has weaknesses as a coach. So we know what Tibbs is, and I think ideally this would have come after 3 years, not 2, but it is what it is. Like, the schedule, everything got pushed forward because we were good, because Julius was really good. So, I mean, victim of your own success in some ways, but it is what it is. He was always supposed to be the bridge coach to me, so it's not that big of a deal. I know other people are like, oh, like, it's gonna be LOL Knicks and Stephen A. Smith is gonna weep on TV some more. Who gives a hoot, bro? That's what I think.
There we go. That's locked on appropriate language. Yeah. I'm with you. Me and Alex have beaten it to death, so I don't think we need to go too in depth on Tibbs specifically. But Prez, I'm curious what your priorities are for the rest of the season as you hear Tibbs' seat heating up behind me. Is it like specific guys in the rotation playing more? Because Alex and I, we got a mailbag question about it, and we did like 10 minutes on our dream rotation, and it was legitimately like hard to find time for everyone. Like, do you just wipe the slate clean with Evan Fournier and say you're not playing anymore? Alec Burks, who for the first 20 games of the year is arguably the Knicks' best player, are you saying, hey, Alex, sorry, man, you're not playing anymore? Like, what does that look like for you? And what exactly are you prioritizing if you were running the Knicks for the rest of the season?
Yeah, it's tough, man. I'm not really a fan of benching the vets who don't suck. So, like, I wouldn't tell Fournier to hang it up. I'd tell RJ to take his time from getting back. I would tell Rose to take his time from getting back. But assuming those guys are both there, then you really, even if you're prioritizing development, you kind of have to give some folks a shorter stick. I think you start IQ and send Kemba to the retirement homes in Riverdale, and that takes care of a lot of IQ's minutes, whatever, 25, something like that. And then you let backup point be D Rose if he's there, because I am a firm believer that, like, that vet infrastructure matters for development. I would keep Fournier starting because he's been good, and I would just let Quentin get a lot of minutes with both the starters and the bench as his backup. I would let Cam be RJ's backup, and I would not play RJ and Julius 40 minutes a game. I think that's the first place to start. And obviously you have to let Obi play some fives, or whatever, however you want to phrase it, play with Julius. Mitch is not going to play 30 minutes a game because he's always, you want to take it easy on him. He has a big guy. So give him 28 minutes, let Obi get a bunch of those backup minutes. And if Nerlens is really healthy, then I would love for Nerlens to play. He's had the worst luck ever for his health. So I would similarly encourage him to take his time. any minutes left. If Nerlens is not playing, they could go to Taj. So, if you do that, I feel like it's still pretty crowded. Like, we didn't talk about my son Deuce. I don't know where Deuce fits in there, unfortunately. I think he plugs in easier if one more vet shuts it down for some reason, or while RJ is injured, then you can kind of plug Deuce in. But if someone has to get the short stick, it's probably him, and that's just kind of the way it is. I'm not really tripping. You just got to tell the vets to AB and like if you're the Knicks, like I talked about this on Pod Strickland, so I won't like beat a dead horse, but like Tibbs has actually contributed to physical damage for a lot of these guys. Like Alec Burks finishing is not an accident. Like, yeah, he's older, but like he's the worst finisher in the NBA right now because he can't jump. And it's also affecting his jump shot now because he's had to play like a zillion point guard minutes, and not just any point guard minutes, but like be the sole source of penetration, get fouled all the time minutes. Julius has to, we're all happy that he's doing big man Julius stuff, like setting contact on picks and rolling and having way more shots at the rim, but that shit hurts. That stuff hurts. So like I'm not saying that's the reason why he has some shenanigans in the fourth quarter, but he's probably a little tired. RJ obviously got hurt because of the extra stupid minutes. So like just ease up, man. Give these dudes breaks. Be generous with the days off and the 30-minute days. Other teams do it. It's not crazy.
All right, guys, we're going to get into Prez's thoughts on what the Knicks' ideal offseason would look like, what types of players they should target, and then our initial draft conversation, including who his number one prospect is for the New York Knicks and in general. But first, football might be over this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance, props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information that you so desperately desire. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
So to move the conversation along, like, and we'll get to the draft stuff in a sec, because I'm sure that a lot of people that probably read the episode title are like, where's the draft talk? I'm desperate for this draft talk. But this is sort of more general. Going into this offseason, where would your priorities lie, both in the draft and free agency for the Knicks? What type of players are you going after? What positions are you trying to address? Like, what are some of your solutions going into this offseason?
There's three things that I don't have any like positional priorities other than the perpetual point guard priority. But in terms of skills, there's kind of three things that it seems like this team is missing, both from a competition standpoint and from a do we have any young guys who offer this standpoint? And those three things to me are rim pressure, athleticism, and like high field processing on offense, like like the only good ball movers and off ball movers and ball passers that we really have are, I would say, are Obi and Quentin. Julius is like a good passer from his own gravity, but he's not gonna someone's not gonna swing him the ball and he's not gonna snipe a touch pass, through traffic or something like that, like Lonzo Ball style or something. So if you can upgrade in any of those departments, that would be cool. Jalen Brunson obviously jumps out as like the potential point guard who you can clear up cap space or do a sign and trade for, which is probably a whole nother episode of this by itself.
Oh, it has been.
In terms of the draft, it's kind of the same thing because we have guys at pretty much all the positions. So everyone's going to be playing behind someone. There's going to be a consolidation move at some point in the next 400 days, right? Like we just have too many guys who need minutes to develop, and the G League is cool, but guys need NBA minutes. So I wouldn't stress too much about position. Like if they really feel the best player available is a 4, that might be the only time where I'm like, because Obi and Julius, they're not just 4s who can play up or down. They're really basically just 4s. And if you're taking like a Paolo or a Jabari or a Chet or one of these guys who's like a top 3 pick and also a 4, then I don't care about position. But if you're talking like the 10th pick and you're taking someone who's only a 4 and can't play the 3 or 5, then I'm like, are we really going to do justice to this kid from a development perspective? I don't know. So those are the skills I'd be looking for. I'm really interested to see what Walt Perrin does, because this class is wide open after like 6 or 7 to like 20. So it's really going to be a time for him to shine, I hope.
This is probably a dumb question because it's hard to find the centerpiece of a team like this. But I mean, to your point on the Knicks' depth at talent, do you think the model for them to eventually be really good is sort of what's going on in Memphis right now? And obviously the dumb part of that is like, you don't just find John Morant, right? Like that is like an incredible like stroke of luck in terms of how they moved up in the draft. And the fact that, I mean, looking at what's going on with Zion, they ended up getting the number 1 guy seemingly. I mean, maybe I have like Jaden Ivey in my head, who, like, to be honest, I haven't watched a ton of, so that might be an insane comparison. But I'm kind of curious if you think like when this Knicks team is good, is it going to look like that, or is it going to be because like they made multiple of those consolidation moves and they have a big 2 or a big 3?
I think the latter. I think the Memphis thing is hard because they got 2 top 3 players in the correct classes by minor miracle. Like they moved up in both instances to get John Morant and Jaren Jackson, their second best player. And both times, like they got the second pick in a 2-player top tier draft with Morant. And with Jaren, I forget if he was 3 or 4, but like they got very lucky that Bagley was picked ahead of him when Bagley wasn't a better prospect. And credit to them for taking those picks. And then they've made tons of smart picks aside from that. Like Zaire Williams is already paying off, and he was a top 10 pick, but it wasn't as much of a slam dunk as the other guys. Obviously, Des Bane is the steal of steals in a redraft. He's probably like 5th or something crazy like that. But you can't, it's hard to replicate that. Like I always say with the Knicks, we really haven't had that incredible stroke of good fortune.
Yeah.
We had it last year with Julius being an all NBA second guy, but pretty much most of the times when teams fall into all NBA guys, it's incredibly fortunate, right? Like you have the high pick in the right year and the right person falls to you, unless you get the number 1 pick, in which case you probably jump to number 1 because the worst team usually doesn't get the number 1 pick. So we haven't jumped up. We haven't had some guy drafted at 12th who magically turns to be like a super duper star like Donovan Mitchell. So the Grizzlies have had that twice and then built around that. So we need to take care of that first step. And then we could worry about like, we're already good at the second step stuff. We got Quentin Grimes and Quickly and all these dudes who are really good from value picks like after 15. So once we get the Jaden Ivey or whoever, or Chet, or maybe it's Julius getting his jumper back next year, or RJ gains 3 inches on his vert, I don't know. Once that happens, we'll be really cooking and we'll be able to consolidate for like a star, and all that good stuff will happen.
Well, if the first step is that the Knicks have to move up in the lottery, I guess we're all just going to die before ever seeing seeing this play out the way that we wanted to.
I was doing Tankathon this morning, and I forgot that you can still move back. Because we haven't moved back in a minute either. Mm-hmm. So in like a couple of years, I think. But it just reminded me that like not only are we not going to jump, but we can also still just get the shaft.
Yeah. I mean, lucky. They did. I guess the last move back was the RJ draft, where they got number 3 instead of number 1.
Right. That's true.
Yeah, because then Obi, nobody moved up from outside of 8 in the Obi draft, and then I think that was it. Because the Lakers moved up in the 19 draft, and then last year, it's been pretty good for the Knicks lately, by relatively speaking, I guess. All right, we'll be right back with Prez's take on number one prospect Chet Holmgren, and all the things that he thinks about Chet, whether he's too skinny for the NBA, whether he's going to be able to hold up against some of these bigger guys at the next level. But one place that is not too big for anyone at any level is rockauto.com, because their prices are small, so small, and that's great when you're talking about car parts. There's so many makes and models of cars. It's impossible for those local chain auto parts stores to stock all the parts that you need. Why would you endure all the pointless and intimidating questioning while they make you buy just the brands that they happen to stock for the prices that they want to sell it to you at, and for more than what a mechanic would pay, when you could just go to rockauto.com, either on your computer, on your phone, on your tablet, maybe send out a smoke signal. I hear that they're taking those, but you can get to Rock Auto however you want. And when you do, you could save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why would you want to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership? Just horror show right there. And on top of it, Rock Auto is a family business. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. So they're going to take care of you. You know that they're going to get you the parts that you need for your car or truck. So go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. And if you decide to buy something, right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. So to move to this year's draft, to the 2022 class, do you think this draft, it's getting looked at by a lot of people as being a weaker draft, but there was another draft in recent memory that a lot of people said that about, and that was the 2020 draft. And I think we're seeing that was pretty wrong. And that draft was actually full of quite a bit of really premier young talent. Even as far back as Emmanuel Quickly at pick 25, but obviously stacked in the early part of the draft with guys like LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards, really tearing it up. Obi Toppin on the Knicks is coming into his own. He was a top 10 pick. I mean, plenty of good picks have gone down from that draft. Do you think that this draft is an actual down year draft, or do you think that this one is maybe being underrated by people, sort of similar to how the 2020 draft was underrated, which maybe has something to do with the proximity to the 2021 draft, which was obviously super loaded and everybody knew was going to be super loaded for a long time, but maybe it's sort of had this effect on the 2 years surrounding it where everybody thinks that it's trash when it's not really.
Yeah, I think that's it. The 2021 draft is going to end up being up there with 96 and 2003 and those ridiculous drafts where it just produces loads of talent. And I do think this is similar to the 2020 draft because similarly, you have basically four guys at the top who all clearly made their claim as the top end talent. Not quite Zion, Cade, Mobley level, but pretty good. And all four of them have actually increased their stock as the season went on. So at the beginning, everybody was like, oh, the top of this draft is strong, but it's not are these guys really franchise changers? Is there a Mobley or a Cade? I don't know. And now it's all right, these four guys might be sniffing around that kind of level, that kind of caliber of prospect. And then similarly to 2020, after the top couple guys, there's a pretty steep drop off, and it's not that it gets bad, it gets flat. And then it's hard to differ. It becomes, the eye of the what is it? The apple in the eye of the beholder. Depending on how you evaluate people, you might have wildly different players ranked 7th and 17th, which is kind of what happened in 2020. You have, Cole Anthony went 15, Isaiah Stewart went 16, Sadiq Bey went 19, Tyrese Maxey went 21, right? Like you said, there's a lot of talent quickly. RJ Hampton, the list, Bane, obviously. So you can see that there's a lot of talent in that middle level, and it goes on for a while. So I'm sure inevitably some studs will emerge from that we didn't expect. But I don't like calling drafts bad drafts, maybe because I just don't like labeling a group of kids bad. But It's just different from last year.
Who's your number one Knicks specific prospect right now?
Chet, who's also my number one everyone specific prospect. Chet is crazy, man. I can't even give a player comp for him because there's no, like, the closest player comp you can have for Chet is like if you take Evan Mobley and kind of stretch him a little more and he's a little slower, but you like take all the points of speed and put that into his 3-point shot. So you get a player who probably isn't going to do as much. Like, at some point in the next 10 years, Evan Mobley is going to score like 25 points a game or whatever. But like, I don't think Chet's going to do that. But this is the easiest way I can put it with Chet. He's the best at the two most important shots aside from free throws: threes and shots at the rim. He's shooting basically 90% at the rim. It's like he's like 90 for 95 at the rim or something stupid like that. And it's not all dunks like Mitch. It's touch shots and layups and ones from people who weigh like 30 pounds more than him. And he's shooting like 47% from three. And it's not just easy threes. It's him pulling up in transition. And he's also the best at stopping the most important kinds of shots. And people are like, oh, he's doing this in the weak conference and in the NBA, guys are so stronger. Do you know how far you have to push this guy away to get his arms away from you? You basically have to put him like under the stanchion and he still might be able to reach you and mess with your shot. So like, and he can dribble and pass because the other stuff isn't enough. Like it's crazy to me. And he's on some kind of hot streak right now. That being said, like all the top four guys are so good. So like I won't, anybody who has one of the other guys first for the Knicks or in general, I'd not like laugh at them or anything. They're all really freaking good. And they're, like I said, it's kind of eye of your beholder. I just think Chet is this weird pterodactyl basketball player thing. And I would love him in New York.
Well, so I'll move to Chet as the first person we get into here, then a little more. Chet Holmgren, of course, of Gonzaga, a stretch 5, you want to call him stretch 4, whatever you think his position is going to be in the NBA.
Pterodactyl is his position.
Pterodactyl, which I guess is the upgrade of unicorn, right?
Exactly.
Moving from mythical to real life creatures that once roamed the earth and flew around like crazy. But of course, then the other top 4 you mentioned, at least I assume that this has to be the top 4, is Jabari Smith from Auburn, Paolo Banchero from Duke, and Jaden Ivey from Purdue. With Chet, though, so the big thing that I've seen be referenced as a concern for him is like, is he too thin? Like,
yeah.
Like he's not just like Anthony Davis thin or Kevin Durant thin when they were coming into the league. He's like Poku thin, which is like almost concerningly looking thin. Like, are they feeding this kid thin? What do you think about when you look at him as far as if that's going to limit his ability in the NBA? Do you think that it doesn't really matter because he's lithe enough and quick enough to keep up with 4s if he wants to just be like a super long 4-man where he won't have to get banged around quite as much against like Joel Embiid or whatever? Like, what's your general stance on him and how he's going to fare in the NBA body-wise?
Yeah, it's uncharted territory. So people with medical backgrounds smarter than me employed by the Knicks hopefully have to make that decision. This is kind of a cop-out answer, but like I'd rather have somebody like Chet than somebody who's like ginormous and weighed 260 pounds. Those are the guys whose foot get in trouble, right? Like, when did Kristaps get hurt? Like, when he started putting on weight after he got a hold of his anemia. So, you look at Tim Duncan and KG back in the day, they mostly floated around like 215, 220. But the thing is, even Chet is not even 215, 220. He's like 190. So you're right. It's like he's going to have to gain some weight. And you got to be careful with how you add that weight because you don't want to stress the bones or anything. That's my super amateur doctor take based on my own history of being in and out of physical therapy. But it wouldn't be enough to stop me from taking him number 1. It's just one of those things where like maybe it's because I'm an armchair amateur, but it's that or whether it's Zion or Embiid or whoever, like I'm taking all these dudes first. I don't like if there's injury concerns, it has to be crazy for me to pass on that level of talent. Because to me, I do have him in a slightly separate tier than the other three guys, personally. So if they were in the same tier to me, then I would be like, all right, take one of the other guys who are safer. But to me, I just think Chet he just impacts so many parts of the game, even when he doesn't have the ball. None of the other guys have anywhere near the same off-ball impact on offense or defense as him. And he has a near on-ball impact to all of them. So, like, that's another way you can frame it.
We had you on, I think, about 4 months ago, Prez, and we were talking about how Kemba Walker might be the New York point guard that was promised. Obviously, that did not work out. But maybe that guy exists in the draft this year, and maybe it is Jaden Ivey. If the Knicks were lucky enough to move up into the top 3 or 4, how would you see his fit in New York, and would he be the guy to finally sort of lock down that position for the foreseeable future?
I don't think he's a point guard, but he would be freaking awesome in the guard. And he's like, we could talk about Chet and Paolo and Jabari, but Ivy's easily the most exciting player because he just flies around and dunks on people. And he's just so the kinetic energy he has is just so electric. It's like Obi or John Morant in that way. That's where the comparisons come from. That and the Jazz anyway. And he's not a point guard though. Like he plays off the ball quite a bit, a little more on the ball lately, but he plays with the point guard and then Purdue's center Trevion, I'm blanking on
Williams, right?
Yeah, Trevion Williams.
Yeah.
He has like a 30% assist rate, which is like more than most point guards. So they have a point center and point guards, and then Jaden Ivey in terms of who's like Jaden Ivey's the best offensive player, but they have other guys running the offense, and they have Zach Edey, who's 7'4", getting like a zillion post-ups every game. So he's not really like running a ton of pick and rolls. And the cool thing is you can see him getting better at that as the season goes on, and him realizing like, oh, I don't have to go first gear or fifth gear. I can use the middle gears and still dunk on people or still make passes. But it's all new to him. So I think he projects to be more of a 2 who can occasionally initiate and facilitate than your full-time, like make sure everybody gets their touches, organize the offense, like read the defense and then call out stuff and call the audibles and manipulate the defense with my eyes and stuff like that. Although you never know though, right? Because like Quickly came in not really as a point guard, and now he acquired a lot of those skills. So, I mean, I guess you can't rule it out.
Yeah, the thing that stands out with me is all that athleticism with Ivy that you mentioned. And that was one of the main things that you just said. Like, that's something that the Knicks should be looking to add is athleticism to this team. So do you think that he would sort of finally give them that like plus pop in the backcourt that I feel like they just haven't had in like since like J.R. Smith? Like
not even though.
Yeah, because he was more of a shooter at that point, right?
Yeah. And JR, for all his hops, like when did his hops really come into play? Like fast breaks and alley-oops. That's really
I was about to say just on like alley-oops, basically. Like he never really just like drove into the paint and just like yammed on somebody like John Moran or something. Like,
it hasn't been since like, I don't know, like Spreewell, bro.
Yeah.
Like that.
Even with Nate Robinson, it wasn't really that practical. It was like every once in a while.
Nate Robinson was just like random spectacular athleticism generator. So he's probably the last one, to be honest.
Nate would jump up and block Yao Ming and then for like 5 games just shoot threes at the wrong basket.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I saw Nate Robinson once at a mall in White Plains getting ice cream with his son. And he's so short. I was like, damn, that guy looks like Nate Robinson, but he's really short, even though Nate Robinson is really short. And then I realized it was Nate Robinson because he had a bunch of diamonds on. And I was like, oh, right. That's probably Nate Robinson.
And you said, Nate, one day you're going to lose to a YouTuber in a boxing match. And...
Oh, God. I didn't want to let him know he was in that timeline. Yeah. Just enjoy your ice cream with your son, bro.
Your day will come, Nate.
Right. Karma's coming for you.
That was
Jake Paul.
That was a really unexpectedly awesome Nate Robinson story that I was not expecting to get today. All right, that's it for this first part with Prez. We are going to be back early next week with another part for you guys. We're going to finish up this conversation, and little teaser, we started getting into Jaden Ivey there, but we're going to finish our discussion on Jaden Ivey, why he could be the most explosive athlete that the Knicks have had since famous ice cream enthusiast Nate Robinson. We'll talk about AJ Griffin, Johnny Davis, Jalen Duren, a bunch of different guys that are going to be available potentially for the Knicks, as well as some of Prez's favorite guys that, at least for us right now, are a little more off the radar because, they're outside of that like mythical top 10 or so picks. So Prez will give us takes on some of his other favorites from inside that lottery range on our next episode with him next time on Locked on Knicks. But till next time, thank you all for listening. We'll be back soon to finish up this discussion and have some more great episodes for you guys, including an episode tomorrow in anticipation of the Knicks' only All-Star action this weekend, where we're going to build out our ideal Knicks All-Star weekend, or All-Star Saturday night, rather, lineup, featuring dunk contest, three-point shooting contest, and the skills challenge. And maybe we'll do that, like, shooting stars or whatever, too, and do our favorite Knicks legends as old people, which, of course, means we're going to have Clyde in there. But we'll talk about that all next on our next episode of Locked on Knicks. Till next time, though, thank you all for listening. Peace out. We will talk to you all soon.